everybody, today I'm bringing you a layout with these two vintage photographs, and by vintage I mean 1979 vintage. Bad photographs, bad color, but a great memory for me, so I'm going to use them nonetheless. I'm going to be using the Pink Paisley Fancy Free collection here, and I'm going to be punching a border with this border punch in just a minute. Not quite sure. I think I was checking to make sure that the video was actually taping and repositioning. I had some problems on the video before this. So anyway, I've grabbed that EK Success scallop border punch. I don't believe this one is available anymore. I think it's called embossed dot, but I don't think it's available any longer. It's the one that Chamel uses a ton of for sure, I know. The papers that I have are from the 12 by 12 paper pad, so I don't actually have a name for those papers, just so that you know that. And I'm going to be using this really wild paper here, and actually the background paper is the paper that caused all of the problems. So I didn't actually know that until I completed this layout. So I'm going to use this blue paper where I've now put a border on it, a punched border, to mat those photos. Because the paper is so many vibrant colors, I need something to separate it, or it's going to be just too much. And I'm playing around with what I'm going to see, how this is going to lay out. And I've decided that one of the things I definitely want to do is cut down that cut apart, and that cut apart came from one of the papers in the paper pad that it says Live Out Loud. So I want to get that to be the same size as the rest of the papers. And these photos are not quite 4 by 6 because they are an older photo. A friend of mine had them, and I was just at a scrapbook retreat with her, and she sent me the 2 copies of these. She's like, they're so bad. And I said, I know, but I want a scrapbook. It's such a great memory. So, you know, Photoshop to the rescue. It at least helped the colors a little bit here. And these are, you know, old friends, most of which I'm still very close to, which is cool because I'm way older than high school, which I was at this time. This came from my freshman year in high school. So now I'm trying to decide again how I want to position this on the paper and what I want to see, because I want to see as much of this really cool paper as I possibly can. And so I'm going to cut that down, the mat down. Originally my idea was just to put it right to the side there, but there were some things, some colors on the other side that I wanted to peek through. So that's what I'm trying to decide here, is where that happens. And I'm going to fool around with this for quite a bit before I actually decide. And part of what I'm doing is, I know I'm going to cluster, but I don't know what they're going to look like. So I need to get those clusters started on the left side to determine how much of the left side of the background paper I'm going to reveal. Right now I'm looking through the journaling cards for the Fancy Free collection. They're actually called the tags. They are a shiny surface though, so just so that you know, if you don't prefer that, or you're going to need to use a slick writer to write on them or it won't dry. And then now I've pulled the ephemera from the Fancy Free collection so that I can start adding to this layout. So pulling elements here. I love acrylic pieces, but I've said this before, I have a really hard time using them on my layouts. I use so much pattern paper in the background that a lot of times they don't show up well, would be the best way to tell you why I have a hard time. But I did love that acrylic there that said Dream, Play, and Love. So that is actually going to stay where it is. And then this is not part of that ephemera collection. It's actually I cut it from one of the pattern papers, those circles. So I'm thinking about that. The one thing I don't like about that cluster there on the bottom left is that there's a cluster on the top left and they line up too much. So I'm eventually going to take that piece there and change that up a little bit. And I also thought one of the things I really needed there was a horizontal element. So much of this is vertical. I grabbed that plant die cut right there, and the reason that that's important, it's a a little symbolism to the story for me. This was an ecology camp that I went to in 1979. So that plant symbolizes that. These photos are from a field trip that we took while at that camp. So kind of cool that I was able to use that. And again, I'm just playing with elements, that little heart die cut there, which is going to move, kind of playing with some of those. I was doing this for National Scrapbook Day, and one of the things that was sort of in my head is that I was doing Mercy Tiara's 27 item challenge, and one of the items on that challenge was flare. So that kind of is one of my thoughts, is that I should see if I could use some flare on this once I get the clusters a little bit more sorted out. So that's going to happen. And then to help define these papers a little bit, I am going to use ink, and I just pulled the card up. I'm living dangerously because I'm inking while things are glued down, but if you've watched any of my videos, you know I like to live dangerously while inking. And I am using my StazOn ink pad. I could have switched back to my regular ink pad and my Tim Holtz ink pad itself, but I just kept this. I used the StazOn one, or I'm going to need to use the StazOn one on that journaling card because it is a slick surface, and I just kept using that card. So, and I don't very often ink like this. Most of the time I use my Tim Holtz foam pad to do it, but you know, some days. And I'm going to get that now, because to ink those scallops I just needed a smaller space because they're not easy to ink. And you don't get them perfectly. It's really hard to get in between the scallop. I'm not that crazy that I need to make sure that they're perfect, just so that the edge of that paper is defined. These papers are beautiful. This one's very bright, but they also have a softness to some of them. And that's what the blue is. It's pretty soft. So I really wanted to get that defined against the busy background paper, which is just beautiful. I'm so glad that I at least have another sheet of that, even though it's caused lots of problems in the industry. So now I'm inking up the pieces that I know I'm going to use. And I decide that I want to put that little die cut there that says memories on some foam tape, just so it stands up itself. I'm thinking that that's going to be the only thing on that cluster, but I'm not positive at this point. So that's why it goes up on the foam tape, so that it's a little bit more prevalent on the page. Okay, now I'm just working again on getting that bottom cluster with the journaling card in with that heart there. And this is where I'm like, oh, I need to go look and see what's going on with my flare. And I'm going to try a few things from the Project Life flare at Joann's, just because the colors are so good for this. The colors of that flare really match the colors of that background paper. So I'll try a few things. I like that one. That's not the one I settled on, but I do like it. Going to end up choosing a different one, and I think the reason I did it is because I thought the flare there stood out so much against the potted plant there, and I wanted to make that stand out a little bit less because it felt like the focus, the Live Out Loud is so bright that I just thought it took the focus away from the photos, the photos in the Live Out Loud, which is kind of the message here. You know, it's one of those messages that I was, I'm going back. If I could tell my younger self, that's one of the things I would say. So it's also a good message for myself now, is, to live out loud, to fully live your life. So acrylics are hard to put down. So I know I'm going to put that little heart up there. So I stuck that down in that corner there. And I'm going to pop up that heart on a little bit of foam tape there as well too. Just gives a little bit more dimension, especially since there's so much dimension on the other side. Now, if you're new to using acrylic pieces like this, you can staple them down as well. Sometimes you can get little glue dots that you won't see as well. I'm going to have to use that technique on the Wonderful Day acrylic up there on the top because there's no good place to really hide much of that. There's one spot that I'm going to be able to put a glue dot and hide it, but it wouldn't hold the whole piece down. So I end up putting a glue dot kind of in a place where I didn't see it. So I went to my brad stash here because that was another thing on the Mercy Tiara list, and I used these old Dear Lizzie brads from one of her first collections. So I can't even tell you how old these are because they are so old. I use brads so infrequently that it's nice that Mercy Tiara had that challenge to encourage me to get them on the page. I have a lot of them. It's silly. You know how things go in and out of fashion. I guess I've said this before, I'm a lazy scrapper, so it takes a lot more effort to, you know, poke a hole to get the brad through than to put an enamel dot on. Now this decorative brad's a little bit different, but still, that's my problem with it. Confessions. I'm a lazy scrapper. Yes, I am. So there were 3 of these resin flowers. And, you know, I knew I wanted to get another one in this cluster. And so this cluster on the bottom somewhere. So I'm looking at where it can go in. I decide in the upper right. And then I'm thinking about this and I'm like, you know, Kelly, there's 3 of these. There's going to be 1 of these in this bright green, which is a beautiful color featured in this background paper. When are you ever going to use this particular brad again? Because it would be the only one like it. I think there were a couple colors of these in that set, but it's the only one. So I'm like, I need to fit in the 3rd brad. So that's what I'm doing now. I decide I'm going to get that 3rd brad onto this layout if it's the last thing I do. And you know, it's nice because it echoes the color in that flower pot is also that green. So that's really cool that all that works together. So I got that on the layout. And I just have a couple of last little touches. Now I do have these stickers from the Pink Paisley Fancy Free collection. And I'm going to use those. This is the actual sticker. They're not the puffy stickers. They're something a little bit different. And I really love that flower. Again, because this is an ecology camp and it was about nature and learning, and you know, those were things we definitely did in the 70s. I like that touch. And I try to use a couple of other ones from this collection. I want something down underneath in that spot because there's 2 pieces right there. I want a 3rd thing, but nothing just seems to be working. And now I'm going to pull, these are the actual puffy stickers from the collection, but they're kind of cartoony would be the best way to describe them, as a lot of puffy stickers are, and that's fine. But on this layout, I just felt like that cartoon look didn't work as well. And I think it's because of the background paper that does it. So I try a couple of those stickers here, mostly the cameras, and I eventually take them off and go to something else. I still want another item under that or by the brad and the flare. So what I do is I grab my basket of enamel dots there and kind of looking again. I looked at those florals from Michaels. They weren't right. You know, and now I'm just kind of looking for color. What color can I use? So I grabbed some My Mind's Eye dots from Chalk Studio 2, and that's what I eventually used. It was the perfect pinky reddy orange color for this layout, and I got to use those big ones. I think I said in one of my last layouts that I have problems using the big enamel dots sometimes, and I like the way this worked out. Sometimes I tuck my enamel dots underneath other elements instead of just on top of the page, and that comes from watching Banning Lane's YouTube videos. So she's Banning Lane on YouTube. I can't remember what her actual name is, but anyway, so if you go to Banning Lane, she likes to tuck enamel dots under things, and it looks a little bit different than just putting them flat on the page. I still do the flat ones a lot, but it's it's something a little bit different than what you often see on my page. So I'll put those away. I am going to journal on that favorites card, but I'm not going to do it on this layout just because I have to think about what I want to say. So I'm just about done. There'll be a still shot and detail shots at the end. Bye!